Well, Dr. Joel Barkan is a senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. He was in Kenya to monitor the elections in December and is in our Washington studio now. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. As I said, you were in Kenya to monitor those elections. What do you make of the situation in the country just 1 month later?
Well, the situation is very troubling for exactly the reasons that your report said. The particular town, Naivasha, I was eating a croissant and sipping espresso just 4 weeks ago there. So you can see how much life has turned in that particular place. But what we have here is we first had a pattern of ethnic cleansing very similar by the supporters of Raila Odinga against Kikuyu in the Western Rift Valley. And now you have revenge by Kikuyu against supporters of Odinga here further east of the Rift Valley, much closer to Nairobi, only 50 miles away from Nairobi.
You use the phrase ethnic cleansing, and therefore do you fear this violence outside any negotiating room has a momentum all of its own, which is not now linked to who won the election and who didn't?
It's clearly gone beyond that. The initial unrest after the election was very definitely spontaneous, although there was some suspect at the time that some of it was organized. This kind of thing reported, particularly by those interviewed by your reporter, indicate that there are militias and gangs that are being encouraged by politicians, and this is creating a spiral of downward violence. And at the same time, the political stalemate remains just that in Nairobi, where Kofi Annan is trying to mediate the dispute.
How does one find a compromise between two such opposing views? You've got both sides saying the presidency is rightfully theirs. Is there any middle ground to negotiate?
Well, the first thing that both sides need to realize, and the point that really must be driven home by the international community, is that it's no longer a question of who really won, because if any side won, it was by a bare fraction of the vote, and therefore neither side commands the legitimate support of over half the population. That means if there's going to be peace in Kenya, and if either side is going to govern, it's going to have to be through a compromise, through a power-sharing arrangement, and probably ultimately some kind of federal system of government that will accommodate the different groups. That might mean that you will have some minorities in some areas having to move out from on both sides, but that may be the price to pay for an ultimate peace.
Okay, so the onus is on the international community now to step in there and save this situation from deteriorating further.
Yes, it is, but there's only so much the international community can do. The UK, the US, the EU are fully behind Kofi Annan's effort in this regard, but it's really Kenyans who must recognize how dire the situation is, particularly the political leadership on both sides. Short of that, the only thing the international community can do is actually a military intervention, but over the long haul, that doesn't solve the problem. Otherwise, you'd have an indefinite occupation. And in other words, ultimately, there must be a political deal. And one can think of a number of arrangements, as I just suggested, power sharing at the central level, federal form of government, where power can be divided and both sides can be accommodated.
Dr. Joel Barkan, very interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much.